Welcome back, boxing fans. So, we've seen all the information going out recently about the PBC and what the PBC is doing. Obviously, they just signed a new deal with Amazon last year in 2023 after Showtime walked away from the sport of boxing, leaving the PBC in a little bit of a lurch, right? Where are they going to go now? Many of us have been hoping that the PBC would have joined DAZN, which would have made our lives easier as opposed to more difficult. And in truth, it probably would have made the PBC's fighters and the owner and everybody involved with the PBC's life easier as well. They would have been guaranteed dates and financial support during this transition from Showtime to DAZN. But unfortunately, they went in a different route. And we're wondering, is that going to be successful or not? So far, they have one fight that's settled, and that is Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman, a fight that nobody was asking for. Who could have ever imagined Keith Thurman fighting Tim Tszyu for a WBO 154-pound title? How did that fight make sense? How did Keith Thurman's name get attached to Tim Tszyu? He was a guy that was calling out Errol Spence and Bud Crawford. All of a sudden, he's in a fight with Tim Tszyu, right? You can't make this shit up. Nobody could see it coming. Nobody was anticipating it. Nobody was asking for it. But this is the fight you get. On the undercard, you get another fight similar. Rolly Romero versus Isaac Cruz. What most of us felt is that Isaac Cruz was going to get that long-waited for rematch with Tank Davis because he was, I think at that time, the WBA's #1 ranked fighter, right? But this gives you some indication that the PBC and Tank Davis's team realized that doing a rematch with him wouldn't really sell. So they weren't really that intrigued in following that course of action. So what did he do? Obviously, his team, Al Heyman, the PBC, moved him up a weight division. And he's not a guy that was struggling to make 135. He's like 5 foot tall. But he moves up to fight Rolly Romero, who, while not a great fighter, has a little bit of name recognition. And they figure, oh, you throw Rolly Romero, who walked away from a Ryan Garcia mega pay-per-view fight, to go fight on the undercard of Tim Tszyu Keith Thurman against Isaac Cruz. And they figured that would help sell this pay-per-view. Okay, so there you are. You're trying to sell your first pay-per-view with 3 fighters that at this time are marginal as far as the stable or even in American boxing. Tim Tszyu is not a star in America. Keith Thurman is irrelevant. Rolly Romero is a dickhead and an asshole. And Isaac Cruz is a guy that's just been cherry picking and clout chasing off of Tank Davis, waiting for an opportunity to rematch him, thanks to beating a 49-year-old fucking Gamboa. Right? So this is what we're getting from the PBC. And now, of course, there's speculation that we're going to get Better BF versus Gvozdyk at 175. If you don't know who Gvozdyk is, I won't hold that against you. Gvozdyk is an ex-175-pound world champion with a career-defining victory over Adonis Stevenson on his resume, who got brutally stopped by Artur Beterbiev 4 years ago, right? So now for David Benavidez to move up in weight to take on this opponent, people ask themselves, when did this fight become relevant? Because it's not. You beat Gvozdyk, and it's not a big deal. It's your first fight dipping your toes into 175 pounds. Okay. But it's not a big name opponent. It's not a fight that's actually going to garner any pay-per-view buys. This fight is guaranteed to do less than Plant and Andrade, in my opinion. And maybe they're going to have some unbelievably great undercard. But that begs the question, who? Who's on the PBC that can help generate buys for this main event? And then, of course, there's speculation that in July, that Tank Davis is going to come back and fight Frank Martin, which for hardcore boxing fans like you and I, it's an intriguing fight. Obviously, it should be a good fight. It's not necessarily a pay-per-view fight because Frank Martin is unknown to everybody. He's almost 30 years of age, never fought a top 10 lightweight in his career. And now he's getting a world title fight opportunity versus Tank Davis, right? As far as Tank Davis's team, with all the people pushing for a potential Frank Martin fight, talking about Tank Davis needing to fight a black fighter, maybe this made sense to them. But as far as marketability and selling of a pay-per-view and being the third potential fight for the PBC in 2024, it doesn't bring too much positivity to the brand. That would be 6 months into the year, and you'd have 3 pay-per-view events, and that's all. That's it. And if that's the kind of expectation we can get from the PBC's deal with Amazon, that's not looking good. But of course, today I was watching Ring IQ, his relay video talking about McCaskill Price, Habazin, and Dan Raphael on the PBC's fiscal issues. So let's just quickly check that out. Let me try to get a better angle. There you go.
To go where the money is, and the money's not with Al Heyman, which is why he's rumored to be selling his PBC. But according to Rick Glacier, Pro Boxing Golden Boy
selling the PBC. It's funny because there's been rumors for years about Top Rank potentially selling themselves as well, and people mocked and ridiculed Top Rank with the possibility that they may sell, even though you need to keep in perspective that Bob Arum is 90-something years old. You know, at this point, it may make sense for him and his family to sell Top Rank, because obviously the dude is older than dirt. But for the PBC to sell themselves now, you're selling at a market low. You don't have a deal agreement with a major network to showcase your fights. No financial incentive coming from another group of people. You have an old, aging stable of boxers, and you just lost the face of boxing in America, as Canelo Alvarez just left to go back to Matchroom DAZN. So really, what assets do you have outside of very few who obviously garner big paydays, which means you got to have opponents that make these kind of things worthwhile. And this is the one thing some people don't pay attention to. Like we're seeing it now with negotiations for Shakur Stevenson with Top Rank. He was offered a guaranteed $3 million, $3.5 million a fight minimum, and he turned it down. And people say, oh yeah, you should turn it down. But you know, what's the market for him? Can he get paid more guaranteed than $3 million, $3.5 million for another network? Because if he can't, then he's walking away from the best deal on the table. And it doesn't mean you can't make huge cash moving forward. You would, but your minimum is reasonable. So if the fights don't sell a lot and don't do pay-per-view, the network isn't losing money on you, but you're also still getting a guaranteed pay, right? We know that Bud Crawford had a deal like this with Top Rank as well. And when he first signed it, people talked great about it because this is guaranteed money, fights that you're guaranteed every year. So, you know, some people like to think that they are mega superstars and deserve $25 million, or like Canelo Alvarez, $35 million a fight. But even Canelo Alvarez, with his recent situation with the PBC, when you have a guarantee of $35 million, it puts a lot of pressure on the platform to have an opponent that they know can generate the kind of money where they can pay you that guarantee. And that is no small sum. So it's no surprise that Al Heyman and the PBC walked away from this deal, because that's potentially a guaranteed $70 million they owed Canelo Alvarez. $70 million, right? That's huge. And if you don't think you have the opponents to generate the money to make it profitable, you should count your lucky stars that you're no longer on the hook for this kind of financial sort of penalty that they could kick you. But let's listen to more.
Boy, they didn't want to take it off his hands. The company in its entirety has little to no value. You wouldn't want to buy the whole thing. No, you'd look at individual fighters that you could use if you were going to bring something over. Say, a young unbeaten guy like an Elijah Garcia.
That's like I was saying, Elijah Garcia is kind of the perfect fighter that you'd want to get from the PBC, or even a Subriel Matias, right? Guys that you don't have huge financial guarantees to showcase their fights. Matias is obviously a world champion with 100% KO rate. Elijah Garcia is Mexican American, right? Who's really good fighter, really good. I mean, imagine him with Golden Boy, right? It would be the perfect relationship. They would nurture him, build him up. He'd obviously become a middleweight world champion. You'd end up potentially getting him in unification fights, and he'd have an ingrained fan base, right? But some of these other names, they're too big, and they've proven that they're not, at this point, megastars. And that's the thing we've said for years about the PBC. What stars have they really created? I mean, we know Floyd generated Tank Davis. Who did Al Heyman's PBC build up? Errol Spence? Deontay Wilder? And that's literally all, right? And both of those guys were manufactured. Neither of them had really sort of become superstars in the sport of boxing, which is why now both of them are irrelevant. Tank Davis is still relevant, but a lot of what he got was being attached to Floyd Mayweather and Mayweather's name and Mayweather's stardom. And he latched on and clout chased off of Floyd to get to where he is now. But now is the point where he needs to do something himself to elevate himself above and become that face of boxing in America. And potentially he could do it, but is the PBC putting him in the right position to do that? Does a Frank Martin fight catapult him to this level?
Middleweight. I think he's at middleweight. Unbeaten guy in Brandon Lee. Gary Antoine Russell.
Brandon Lee, did he even fight in 2023? Gary Russell, he should have been the guy who fought for that WBA world title, or at least had a fight with Rolly Romero in the recent fight, right? That would have been a phenomenal fight, right? And at that point, Gary Antoine Russell could be a WBA world champion with Rolly Romero's scalp on his resume. And at this point, that would be a really big potential fighter to have in your stable. And then you could have potentially had him fight Subriel Matias in what hardcore fans would have went crazy for, a unification fight between two guys with 100% KO ratio. Yet they lost Subriel Matias, and Russell's been shelved, just like many fighters in the PBC have been.
Maybe you can find use for those fighters because they're still young, as opposed to what remains of the stable, guys in their mid to late 30s that aren't that active, they haven't been fighting, and don't have much marquee value. That's
the thing, and this statement is what motivated me to make this video, because we're going to go through the PBC's stable and talk about buy or sell. Which of these fighters, if you were a promoter right now, would you want on your stable? You would buy them because you think they are productive, profitable. And which guys would you sell because you just don't want to have them on the books any longer? Let's read this quote by Rick Glazier. These rumors abound that Golden Boy is buying PBC, and other rumors is ProBox buying the PBC. Both boxing companies have rejected buying that bag of bones. In actuality, there's nothing very tangible to purchase worth owning. PBC is going down. It's intriguing to see that Golden Boy, who obviously a lot of these fighters on the PBC used to be part of, until, of course, Al Heyman and Schaefer stole them from Golden Boy, and then, of course, jacked them and created the PBC. I hope people don't forget that history. This tells you the whole basis of what the PBC was built on: theft, and fraud, right? Literally, that's what this group of boxers and people involved were built on. And now the possibility of Golden Boy going back to buy them, I think obviously a few fighters would be great for Golden Boy. David Benavidez, Elijah Garcia, and maybe one or two others. As far as Pro Box is doing a great job right now of putting on boxing against smaller level fighters, right? Guys that don't have a lot of name recognition, and they want to develop those guys. And obviously, when those guys develop, it's going to help Pro Box grow as well. We just saw the light heavyweight fighter Naji Lopez fight this past Wednesday. And there's a few guys on this PBC card potentially you could put in a similar situation, like Nunez and a couple of the Cuban fighters, right? Maybe even the two Cuban heavyweights who obviously at this point don't really generate big paydays, but they would be great additions to a budding promotional company like ProBox. But outside of that, what exactly do we get if we look at the PBC? So let's take a look right now and we'll break that down. Let me just come here and see if I can find it. Okay, I'm trying to, there we go. So let's go to this one and see. So there we go right there. And we'll just go through and say buy and sell and tell me if you have a different opinion. So we go through and here we have Abdur Lakakov, who at one time was an Errol Spence mandatory at 147 pounds. Currently, he's 20-2. Errol Spence never had the opportunity to fight him, even though he was a mandatory, because that fight was never made because they were too busy trying to put Errol Spence on pay-per-view. And having a guy like him, who was a very good amateur, but didn't have much of a presence in America, didn't make him the best potential opponent. You have Carlos Adames, who the WBC has literally locked away and hasn't given him the opportunity to even become the interim middleweight champion now that Charlo's been inactive for a long period of time, right? Would you buy any of these guys? Abdur Kakov, sell. Carlos Adames, maybe with the budding possibility of some other people in this division like Elijah Muhammad. What am I talking about? Fucking Black Power. Elijah Garcia. And some of the other potential fights at that weight class is potentially, Charlo may move up from 140, 154 as well. I would keep Carlos Adames in your stable. He's 29 years old. He's looked fantastic recently. So you have that one fighter there who I would keep. Then you have Akhmedov. I would sell. Here's a Ukrainian fighter that, is 10-3 with 9 KOs. Obviously, he's been in with very good level of fighters. That's why he's got 3 losses, even though you can see that he's a very good fighter. But at 140 pounds, has he been getting the kind of activity that he needs? Has he been getting in fights with guys like Rolly Romero or Gary Russell? I just wouldn't want him on my stable because I just don't know if he is worthwhile. Emmanuel Elim, sell. This other kid, Alim, the Beast, sell. At one time, he was getting a lot of hype as a potential Stephen Fulton opponent. But the problem with him is he wasn't young. And then the first time he stepped up and faced a solid opponent, he got beat. Devin Alexander is 90 fucking years old, has been irrelevant, right? The fact that he's still on the books with the PBC, they're just potentially holding him to showcase one of their fighters against him, maybe. So I would sell. Obviously, Canelo is no longer there. German and Kanjas just got beat again recently. So I would say definitely sell. Demetrius Andrade, the first time he stepped up in a world title fight on pay-per-view, got smashed. sell. Michael Angeletti, 27 years of age, 124 pounds, so 126er, 10-0 with 7 KOs. A kid like him you could keep, right? He's got some power. He's still young as far as his professional career. You know, you don't have to pay him much money. And at 126 pounds, there's a lot of potential PBC matchups. Uh, Alfred Angulio is still fucking on the books. The dude's 41 years old. I don't know the last time he had a fight. Sell. Chris Arreola, sell. Vincent Astrolabia. He did get a big win over Rigo, and then he was just recently beat again. He's only 26 years of age at 118, bantamweight division. I would say at this point, if you have fighters at bantamweight, he's a good potential opponent, but otherwise I would sell. Angel Barrentes, who is 10-1 with 6 KOs. I've never heard of him. He's 21 years of age, already has a loss. At this point, I would sell. His brother, 8-0-6, 21 years old, at 126, like I just said. I would keep young prospect. You throw him with Golden Boy, probably would have a lot of life potentially left for him. Mario Barros, now's the time, obviously, right? He's got big potential fights against guys like Stanionis or Boots Ennis or other in-house PBC fighters. So, you know, he's got some value. Ismael Barrasso, 41 years old, and somehow this dude just won't go away. Just obviously catapulted himself back into mandatory position for a Rolly Romero rematch, a fight that Rolly definitely does not want. For Barrasso, I would keep him because you know he's not going to ask for much money, but yet 25 wins, 23 knockouts, 4 losses, and you know, one of those was a robbery, and this is a guy that at 41, you have some good value because he's an exciting fighter and obviously doesn't cost much. The Bartholomew brothers, get rid of both of them. They've never been worth anything, even though they're both very skilled fighters. David Benavidez, buy. His brother, Jose, sell. Fucking Andre Berto, 40 years old, still on the books. And isn't he having, or didn't he just have another fight recently against another 40-year-old? Didn't he fight Robert Guerrero? Did anyone watch that fight? Did anyone care? Sell. Broner, sell. Marcus Brown, sell. Marcus Brown was a good fighter, but he's 33. He stepped up. He's gotten beaten. I think he'd asked for too much money to generate fights, and he hasn't proven that he's worth it. Butayev is 30. Obviously, one loss against Stanionis in the welterweight division with guys like Mario Barros, Stanionis, Boots Ennis. So I would keep him. He has some life left in him. Brian Castano, dude's 34, hasn't really done anything since getting beat by Charlo, has enjoyed the big money fights, the paydays he got from those 2 fights. He may be Errol Spence's next opponent from what people are saying, and that wouldn't be a bad fight. But at this point, you know he's going to ask for more money than he's worth. Sell. Castro, sell. Charlo, sell and sell. Jamonte Clark, 29 years of age, 2 losses, 1 draw, no power at 154 pounds. He's probably the least interesting 154-pounder in boxing. Sell. Chris Colbert just got beat again. Sell. Terrence Crawford, no longer a part of the PBC. Cody Crowler, 30 years old, undefeated, not the most exciting a fighter, a bit of a boring style. He's from Canada, so I got to give him some props for that. There's talk about him potentially facing Boots Ennis. Boots is not a PBC fighter, so we have to see how that fight happens. Potentially, that fight may be forced to happen on another network if it goes to purse bids. Cody is the mandatory. You know, I would sell because I've never been that much of a fan of Cody Crowler. Isaac Cruz, exciting fighter, 25 years of age, very young, potentially going to become a world champion at 140 pounds, which I don't know how that makes any sense at all. They could throw him in with potentially Gary Antoine Russell afterwards, even though his mandatory is probably going to be against Barrasso. So Barrasso, Isaac Cruz, not the kind of fight that's going to sell too much. Cruz against Gary Russell, obviously a fight that's not going to sell that much either. You know, Isaac Cruz is going to be asking for probably too much money based on his Tank Davis fight and now his Rolly Romero fight. If he wins, he's going to think he's a star, even though he's misshapen for 140 pounds. This dude should be at 135 pounds, where there's potential fights with a lot of young up-and-coming fighters, and then I may keep him. At this point, if he went to Golden Boy, I could see that he would be a useful part to them. So, okay, I will keep this kid, 29 years of age, 23-1, Polish fighter, sell. Gervonta Tank Davis, buy. But at the same time, any fight you try to do with Tank Davis is going to cost you $1 million. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Kyron Davis, he is 18-3-1, 6 KOs. He's going to be fighting Elijah Garcia. Is he going to be drawn down to 160 pounds? He's being used as an opponent, right? And that's what many of these fighters on PBC are. They're not stars. They're opponents. They're guys that are there so that when they try to build up their fighters with inside promotional fights, they have someone to look for. And that's what Kyron Davis is, the perfect example of that. When he gets beat by Elijah Garcia, then basically you're going to sell. Edwin De Los Santos, I never thought he was that good. I would sell. Demrezian, you know, Turkish, German fighter. I don't know what his market is in America unless you're going to feed him to one of the big Cuban fighters. Otherwise, I would sell. Derevchenko, exciting fighter, but probably past his best. Sell. Darrell, both these guys, 40-year-olds, inactive, irrelevant, sell and sell. Donaire, sell. Austin Delap, sell. I mean, Delorme, sell. Easter, sell. Easter is fucking, has he fought? When was the last time Easter fought? Rashidi Ellis, sell. Oscar Escandón, sell. Brandon Figueroa, sure, buy. Exciting fighter. I don't think he's great, but he's only 27 years of age at 126 right now. As I said, there's quite a few fighters in the PBC at that weight class, so there's a lot of potential fights to make. His brother, sell. And his brother's only 34, right? His brother, it seems like he's about fucking 80. Miguel Flores, sell. Javier Fortuna, sell. Stephen Fulton, only 29 years of age, 21-1, only 8 KOs, not the biggest puncher. He's now going to be moving to obviously 126 pounds. This is definitely a division the PBC has a lot of fighters in, and adding him with the potential rematch to Figueroa, I definitely think keep Fulton. Funduro, keep. He's going to be fighting Surrey Bolchak. That's a great fight. Obviously, I think that's in the undercard of Keith Thurman and Tim Zhu. This is probably the most exciting fight from that card. Funduro versus Bolchak. But if he loses to Bolchak, sell. If he beats Bolchak, he becomes relevant again in a strong division with the PBC, 154 pounds. Danny Garcia, sell. Mikey Garcia, sell. Sergio Garcia, sell. Hector Luis Garcia, he's currently a world champion, 32 years of age. Because he's a champion, I guess you have to buy. Elijah Garcia, undefeated 20-year-old, 16-0, 13 knockouts, buy. Terrell Guasha, sell. Uranus C. Gomez, good Cuban, not that old, middleweight, 6-1, 5 KOs. You know, with some of the possibility you have at the middleweight division with the PBC, he would seem like a fighter you should keep. And one loss, we shouldn't necessarily hold it against him. So at this point, I would keep. Buy. Sam Goodman, buy. Robert Guerrero, fucking sell. Vosdick, he's in a fight that's scheduled against Benavidez. Otherwise, I would sell. Tony Harrison, sell. Jesse Hart, sell. Robert Hellenius, sell. Marco Hernandez, sell. Vladimir Hernandez, sell. Jared Hurd, sell. Danny Jacobs, sell. Jamal James, sell. Omar Juarez, sell. Ryan Carl, sell. Kavalaskis, you could keep. He's a little older at 35 years of age, but with guys like Stanionis, Mario Barros, potentially Boots Ennis, and a couple other fighters mentioned at the 147-pound division, you need guys like him. Exciting, hard punchers, 19 knockouts in 24 fights. His 2 losses, obviously, to elite fighters, one to Ortiz, one to Bud Crawford. Korbanoff, sell. Kanaki, sell. Lara is a world champion, but he's a world champion that inherited belts, didn't win them, and hasn't fought since getting them. He's got a fight set against Michael Zarafa, a fight they didn't want to do, but because it was forced and mandated, it's getting done. They were trying to jam a Danny Garcia Lara fight against us. He's 40 years old. He's got no future. He's going to ask for too much money. I would sell. I ain't interested. Lipinets, sell. Lopez, sell. Lubin, only 26. Was he 26? 28 years old. But at this point, I guess you keep him because 154 pounds, as I stated, has quite a few in-house PBC fighters. So there's a lot of work you can do with him. So buy. Gabriel Mastier, 6015, fucking 37-year-old fighter who at welterweight, I guess, makes sense to keep him. We already talked about a plethora of welterweight fighters, but you need to put him in fights with those guys. Throw him in with a Barrios. Throw him in with a Stanionis. Throw him in with a Boots Ennis. Make the fights. So I would keep him, but he ain't getting paid much. Magdalena, sell. Mark Maxaya, I was never high on him, sell. Abner Mares, oh my God, sell. Claudio Marrero, yeah, once a very exciting fighter, at this point, sell. Trevon Marshall, 23 years old, not old, already 1 loss, 9-1, 8 KOs, sell. Charles Martin, sell. Frank Martin, buy. Fernando Martinez, buy. He's 32, a world champion, one of the most exciting fighters in boxing. Brian Mendoza, buy. You can use him at middleweight. You can use him at 154. Obviously, those 2 divisions have a lot of in-house PBC opponents. Vito Melanicki Jr., sell. I don't want this kid anywhere near my stable. I know he's 154, but I don't care. David Morrell, buy. Luis Nunez, buy. 24 years old, 19-0, 13 KOs, not asking for too much money. 126, jam-packed PBC division, great fighter. Mongolian fighter, I liked him, good amateur, sell. Obeletin, 9-0, 7 KOs from Philly, light heavyweight, 25 years of age, buy. Victor Ortiz, sell. Luis Ortiz, sell. Pacquiao, sell. Jean Pascal, sell. Payano, sell. Lean Pero, I would buy. Heavyweight, 10-0, 7 KOs, much more of an exciting Cuban fighter. Potentially in the heavyweight division, you can definitely make money with him. Brian Perella, sell. Caleb Plant, buy. Porter, sell. Postal, sell. Darwin Price, sell. Puello, I don't want him. I know it's a division that has potential fights, but I don't want to sell. Edward Ramirez, sell. Abel Ramirez, sell. Jesus Ramos, only 22 years of age, 21-1, 16 KOs. Obviously, that loss coming to Lubin. It could have went his way if he would have fought harder in the last few rounds. So he definitely has a future. Rigo, sell. Emmanuel Rodriguez, world champion, 118 pounds. Buy. Elvis Rodriguez is no longer with the PBC. Freddie Rojas, 25, 13-0, 11 KOs. Buy. Orlando Romero. I know the division's packed. 140 pounds PBC opponents. A lot of fighters. So buy. Jason Rosario, sell. Andy Ruiz, heavyweight, buy. Russell, buy. His brother, sell. His brother, sell. Frank Sanchez. Frank Sanchez is an enigma, right? 31 years old, 24-0, 17 KOs, already has a very good win against Efe Ajagba. But is he marketable? At this point, I don't think he's going to be asking for too much money, so I buy. Santa Cruz, sell. Santa Maria, sell. Kenneth Sims, sell. Errol Spence, sell. Joey Spencer, fuck him. Stan Jonas, buy. Solecki, sell. Yanez Teles, 23 years old, Cuban, 7-0, 6 KOs, buy. Thurman, sell. Trout, sell. Truax, sell. Tim Tszyu, buy. Ugis, sell. Jose Valencia, only 24, but, you know, I've never been a fan of his. He is a 135, 140-pound fighter, so I guess you want him in the mix. So buy. Ray Vargas, sell. Vidal, sell. Villa, sell. Justin Valoria, buy. Young kid, 19, 4-0, 3 KOs. Rashid Warren, sell. Wilder, sell. Julian Williams, sell. So how many of these fighters did I actually buy? Most of the ones I bought, it's because they were young, cheap, and had upside. A few of the other ones I kept because they're in divisions where we have a lot of fighters in that stable already. So there's a lot of in-house fights we can do, which means that you can control those fights very easily. You don't have to work with outside promoters to make those fights. And there's potentially a lot of mixing and matching and style matchups that could be good if you had good people that were building the fights, the matchmakers. But I don't know if PBC has good matchmakers. And how many of these fighters have fights scheduled? Let's go through. There's one, Tim Tszyu. There's two, Keith Thurman. 2 fighters. There's 3, Romero. Fights scheduled. Lara, 4. Elijah Garcia, 5. Funduro, 6. Kyron Davis, 7. Isaac Cruz, 8. Eight fighters out of this stable have fights set. 8. I think that tells you everything you need to know about the PBC. There's just not much in the books worth keeping. And the fighters that you could sell or you could use want too much money. A lot of the ones that are younger have been underdeveloped. We haven't seen them fight enough. The one exception, Elijah Garcia, who has a fight scheduled. But all those other young up-and-coming fighters I talked about, none of them have fights set, right? And this is March of 2024. You figure some of these guys would have fights set up for down the road. But at this point, we don't know what the PBC is doing. And because of that, there's a lot of instability within the PBC. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? Who would you buy and who would you sell? Is there anybody that I bought that you don't want? And is there anybody I sold that you think I should have bought? You can leave it in the comment section below. Tell me, if you were Golden Boy or Pro Box, would you buy the PBC? Thanks for watching. See you next time. Peace out.